We just wanted to kind of have some open, fun discussion. We're having some fun with backgrounds. There's a tree theme. John is sort of indoor, outdoors in real life in his house. So we'll obviously give a few minutes for folks to join, but we're keeping these events really light and open and chatty, just as I think we're all kind of webinar fatigue. So we want to take a different approach with it. But my name is Nick Ray. I'm with RunSafe. I'll be your MC, your host with the most, if you will. So thanks for joining. But I've got John Osborne from RedHat, Tim Johnson from Cloudbees, and Sven Ruppert from JFrog to talk about DevSecOps today. But wave hi, everybody. Nice. Good to have you here. So I think, Tim, probably a lot of folks are wondering what's in the background there. What do you got going on there? Oh, did we lose Tim? Oh, there you go. Yeah, you froze for a second there.
Okay, so did you ask me something?
Oh, yeah, maybe it was my internet connection.
No, I heard you. Yeah, I heard you.
Oh, okay. Your background's really interesting. You got to shift your head to the side and let people see.
Yeah, those are my two boys. They're both 6'7" and 2 meters tall, and a redwood tree here.
I think we might be suffering from a poor internet connection on your end. Sven and John, do you hear?
Yeah, it sounded like Tim was cutting out a little bit there.
A little garbled.
Yeah.
Well, for folks that didn't hear that, those are his boys in the background in the redwoods, and they're both 2 meters tall, 6'7", which is hard to believe given the size of that tree. But we got a tree theme. I'm on the beach. Sven's in the actual forest, and yeah. Tim's going to come back. Well, I'll get things kind of formally kicked off here. Then we're a minute in, and thanks everybody for joining. Again, my name's Nick. I'm with RunSafe Security here. I'm going to share my screen briefly, but we're going to not spend too much time on screen sharing because we're trying to keep this interactive and fun. But we've got a series of events that we've been conducting throughout the week, as it is CyberWeek. So this is day 4, but actually the 5th event that we've conducted this week. And as mentioned earlier, we've got to focus today on DevSecOps and some fantastic speakers, panelists, industry experts in the DevSecOps world. And we'll come back to you guys for kind of formal introductions as we kick things off officially. But we're day 4 in DevSecOps commercial. We did federal yesterday, and that was a great discussion. We kicked off the week with 5G and a discussion on Tuesday around cloud workload security. And for tomorrow, if you haven't signed up and you want to check out our event on supply chain security, that should be a really fun one as well. You can hit our website, runsafesecurity.com, just hit our blog section and register there. Now I mentioned we had 6 events, and for those that are good at math, you see 5 here. So what's that 6th event? Well, it happened on Tuesday, so apologies, you won't be able to attend it. But we had a really fun trivia tournament challenge on Tuesday. It was a charitable event. We invited the world's top cybersecurity companies to compete against each other in a head-to-head bracket competition. And pleased to announce Hypercube was the winner. They destroyed RunSafe in the final on William Shakespeare and movies. So apparently we know nothing about those 2 topics, and Hypercube is really good at it. But the proceeds for this particular event benefited the Atlantic Council's Cyber Statecraft Initiative, which helps fund scholarships for students seeking a career in cybersecurity. So it was really fun to participate in that, and just want to give a public shout out and thanks to all the businesses that participated, and certainly the Atlantic Council for being a sponsor of that event. So for today, just a few housekeeping items. Panelists, us, will have audio and video, obviously, as you see. And you as attendees can interact with us as we go throughout the event. We'll have Q&A and chat enabled. And you can certainly raise your digital hand if you'd like to ask an actual live voice question. And we certainly encourage that. So feel free to interact in any ways you would like, written or voice. So we'll have Jeff in the background, who's kind of our behind the scenes logistics manager, watching for people raising their hands, and we'll give you guys an opportunity to interact with us. So on to just a brief overview of RunSafe for folks that may not be aware of who we are and what we do and where we sit in the cybersecurity world. Our core focus is really immunizing software without developer friction in a number of different areas: embedded systems, open source, cloud workloads. And obviously we fit pretty nicely into the DevOps and DevSecOps world. We plug into hardened code either at build time or at deploy time. And we've built an interesting library of open source pre-hardened infrastructure. So taking hardening to the next level and helping you easily harden code that you might find in typical modern application architectures, web servers, database servers, etc. But that's just a bit of a grounding on what we do. But I'd like to pivot now into sort of the official start of the event. Again, my name's Nick. I lead the market development team here at RunSafe, joined by John Osborne, chief architect at RedHat, Sven Ruppert, developer advocate at JFrog, and Tim Johnson, senior product marketing manager at Cloudbees. So you recognize some fantastic names in the DevOps, DevSecOps space. So again, thank you to all of you for being here. Really looking forward to your industry insights as we go through the event. So I'll kick things off here. We're going to actually do something a little bit different that's going to require some audience participation. So keep your mouses ready. We're going to use a series of poll questions to run through the various topics around DevOps and DevSecOps. So we're going to start that in just a second. But to officially open up the discussion, I'd love to have each of you on the panel just do a quick intro of who you are, where you sit in the industry, and then your definition of DevSecOps. It means different things to different people, and we'd love to hear kind of your perspective and your definition. So, John, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So thanks again for having me. My name is John Osborne. I'm the chief architect for Red Hat Public Sector. So generally a focus on cloud native, cloud adoption. Kubernetes is pretty big at the heart of that, and some of the ecosystem components there for state and local, Fed, and DoD IC customers. So highly regulated industries essentially. And in with that, you also have a lot of DevOps, SRE type of adoption. So I've been here doing this type of work for, at least at Red Hat, for 7 years. We've been in the Kubernetes space for almost 6 of those. Before that, I came from Navy. I was a SRE there. So a lot of times I'm just applying a lot of the things I kind of learned, hands-on keyboard now. To me, there's been a lot said about DevOps over the years, and there's a lot of different definitions of it. To me, like the simplest definition I can really find or think about is it really just is about the improvement of daily work. What that means in terms of day-to-day, a lot of it means reducing technical debt. If you mention DevSecOps, a lot of people initially go to, oh, I'm automating security policies and other things that have been manual. They initially, because there was DevOps and then DevSecOps, they immediately focus on the sec if you're talking about DevSecOps. But DevOps is really a tool to solve our larger business outcomes. So you really have to go back to that and kind of work backwards in a lot of cases. And DevSecOps is really the improvement of daily work, with kind of those security and policies kind of baked in to that as a first-class citizen.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it. Let's move to Sven.
Okay, so hello from Germany. So for me, the day is more or less done. And the picture, what you see here as my background, this is my COVID home office. So since February, I try to stay as much as possible in the office, not in my office, my forest office, because I found out that there are some hills and there I have very good mobile connection. And the first thing I tried was just calculating how much eco packs and solar panels I need to work properly the whole day remote. And remote for me is really everywhere. And the good thing was I could just take my kids with me. They are just destroying not my home. They are now playing in the forest. And I started recording videos and talks and meetings from the forest. So if you're interested in this, check out my YouTube channel. You will see crazy forest talks. But I'm working as developer advocate for JFrog. And we are specialized for the whole DevOps part, including the security part. And what my personal thing is, so I started working with Java in 1996. I never learned another language. So don't ask me something about other languages. But in the Java field, I was mostly focusing on these legacy projects, UN, World Bank, military space, government, whatever, all these slower, traditional, old school project management style environments. And what I could see here is that legacy, refactoring, quality, security, and all this stuff, this are just is running hand in hand. So for me, DevSecOps is just one of the next ops. I think we have so many ops now, but DevSecOps is a really cool thing after DevOps. And I think that quality and security is running hand in hand for sure. And I don't want to focus the security part just on the technical aspects. So mostly I'm looking a little bit left and right from your whole supply chain or factory or whatever, to include security as business security as well. Because what does it mean if you have something that's going wrong and you're not earning money anymore, even with a secure system, if it is technically secure? That's my part. So back to you, Nick.
Thanks, Sven, and thank you for joining us from the forest. It looks like you're actually there, so hands off for being creative. Tim, over to you.
Yes, well, I'm practicing resilience this morning. My internet connection was too unstable, so I switched to the phone and going in my cellular right now. So my wonderful background is now gone. I don't have it on my phone. So I'm product marketing director here at Cloudbees. And I've been in the DevOps space for about 4 or 5 years. And a long time ago, I was at BMC, where we're all about operational efficiency. So when Andy Mann's DevOps manifesto came out, 2009, 2010, something like that, I read it and I thought, wow, this makes sense. And so I've been kind of a devotee from the get-go, and I got into the industry about 4 years ago at Electric Cloud, and previously I'd spent quite a few years in security. So I worked for pretty much all the names you can think of: Surf Control, Postini, Google, Blue Coat, Cisco, and a couple others. So I have a really clear security background from that standpoint. And from where Cloudbees is, our position is that DevSecOps doesn't exist, or another way of thinking of it is a sec is silent when you think about it. So, DevOps is about breaking down primarily 3 silos: data silos. And once you break that down, now you've got a communication silo between teams to help them agree on what the right thing is to do, value stream mapping and so forth. And then once you have that broken down, now you actually have to break down the silos of processes and get them together, and go back to what John says about improving your daily work. So if you've got silos or manual steps along the way, whatever those are, you're not improving your daily work. Or if you take a look at it from a security standpoint, that's a vulnerability. Anytime people aren't communicating on the same level, anytime there's a manual step in that, that's a problem. That's a security risk, either integrity, availability, or confidentiality. Any one of those things could go wrong. So we're in a unique position in that, we look at the entire software development lifecycle. We can actually govern it with release pipelines. So yes, you have to shift left to secure the code early in the process. The sooner you do it, the better. Everybody agrees on that. But if your pipeline process is vulnerable, you got problems. Can you control who has access to it? If somebody decides to go rogue, go off the page and change a configuration of an environment just to make a test pass, that's a problem. Can you detect that and so forth? And then once you have the software in production, what are you doing about it out there? Are you actually doing, using your application monitoring, whatever, Dynatrace, App Dynamics, whoever your is of choice, to make sure that code is still safe, it's still running. And if you detect a vulnerability, yes, mean time to detection is a key DORA metric. Great. Mean time to repair is another great metric. But there's a gap. What do you do between that? Do you have the ability to shut that thing off immediately, whether it's behind a feature flag or roll it back because you rehearsed this stuff right? You're not going to be secure. And so when DevSecOps comes into play, if you're not doing all of those things, you're not doing DevOps at the end of the day. So calling it something separate, I think, does it a disservice. Because if you're doing DevOps right, all of this stuff is baked in from the get-go.
Baked in, yeah.
Yep. So that's our semi-controversial view.
I love the provocative perspective, and that's exactly what we were hoping for. So that's why I had you go last. I had this hunch that was coming, and that's great, right? The theme of being built in, if it's done right? That's definitely, part of our ethos as well. In terms of the RunSafe, go-to-market proposition, if you will. So
I think that's part of the, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
My kind of view on it is.
Please.
Yeah, I think that's part of the evolution of it, because if you look at a lot of the DevOps kind of publications and what people were trying to aim at 5-6 years ago, it was security is everyone's job. Everyone knows that developers are 30 to 1 or so to security people in most organizations, and everyone's going to take this kind of responsibility for security. We kind of learned over the years that yes, developers should think about security, but they're also really bad at it, right? They're just not good. It's not their number one concern. And just saying it's everyone's job kind of belies the fact that the developers aren't that great at it. And so we've kind of migrated from, yes, developers should still care about security, but you now need to have some sort of API or bake it into the platform for a handoff where it's going to be enforced by default. Because if you just say, oh, it's their responsibility, then you're not going to get the results that you want as part of that.
Yeah, but there's one part that is more or less coming from Tim. So if this is part of the whole production line, it must be in a way that the goal to reach better security is a personal goal of every involved person. So if you are earning more money, if you're doing something left or right because your KPIs are wrong and they have nothing to do with security, they have something to do with business or whatever, they will optimize everything to have more income. So it's very important to have a look left and right to see that the KPIs or the goals of these individuals are aligned to the goals to have a secure or a higher quality system. It's the same with test coverage. It's the same with, we all know that stupid test coverage just to reach a amount of lines covered is exactly the same. And so security is just the next topic that we try to include in this way. But this is sometimes a bit missing part. So how to align the team and the team goals on a personal level.
It is a big missing part. And that's really where you need leaders too, because the people on the ground floor can do a lot, right? They can do automation, they can automate processes, they can change some of their workflows, but that's really where you need leaders to come in from the top down and figure out what to measure, how you're going to align those measurements with their OKRs, how you're going to define success, and overall make the structural or alignment changes that you might need to make those as well. And that's where I think kind of you really, if you don't have both of those from the bottom up and from the top down, and that's where you kind of end up really stalling out at some point.
Yeah, I totally agree with both of you. And I'm a big proponent of, we're rational human beings, and our compensation plans tell us what we should be doing. And if there are no incentives, directives, metrics to do something appropriate for your job related to security, then you're not going to do it. Your comp plan is going to elicit the behavior the comp plan is intended to. Whether that's what you want or not at the end of the day is another story. At DevOps World last year, I was talking with a fella, a worker bee from a Midwestern bank, and he was bemoaning the fact that the engineering director and his DevOps, he's in the DevOps team director, and the security director were all, hey, we're doing DevOps. But none of the teams, nothing had changed at the team level. He'd ask somebody from the engineering team to do something, and they'd say, it's not a priority. Well, it was a priority for him, but not for them. And security would be bugging him for stuff that wasn't high on his list. And that's where that disconnection that you're talking about, John, it happens, is that alignment means everybody agrees what they're doing and what their priorities are. And it's okay if those priorities are different, but everybody has to know that. And then you can start changing behaviors and changing processes where those things misalign to the detriment of everything.
And it's a challenge too, because especially in public sector, these aren't always the same teams. Sometimes you have a dev team that won a contract and an ops team that won a contract, and they throw it over the wall. I've seen multiple throw it over the walls. You got one team throws it over the wall to test. They never talk to those people. A test team throws it over the wall to production. That's another team, another contract. And so that's where I think they're still thinking that out a little bit, but that's really where you need APIs, and you still need things into the contracts to figure out measurements, because if you're not measuring, then you're just kind of blindly walking through life.
Right.
So.
Well, I was just going to say, one of my colleagues, Anders Wahlgren, he's long said automation is auditing, and automation is a description of what you understand you're supposed to be doing. And if you can't do that, then how do you know how can you accomplish the goal if you can't describe what it is that you're doing? So
that is a challenge.
So let's talk about automation for a minute. There's actually a poll question that I'd love to send out to the audience here. So get your mouses ready. Jeff, I'm going to actually do this one here. I'm going to launch the poll now. So the question is, DevSecOps promises the automation of security in CI/CD pipelines. Are you realizing truly automated security in your pipelines? So make your selection. We'll give it about another 15 seconds or so, and then we'll share the results of that. So thanks for bringing up the automation topic. That was a good segue.
You didn't even pay me.
Didn't have to. It's perfect.
It's an interesting topic, because when you really kind of talk to leaders too, what they really want to do, yes, they want automation, but what they also really want to do is take knowledge out of the domain experts' heads and get that into a codified process. And if that automation was a Google document or a list of steps, they'd be perfectly happy with that, even if it wasn't, a Kubernetes something or an Ansible something or a Bash something or whatever. And that's really the hard part about it.
Yeah, following a series of steps on a document doesn't sound like automation. So yeah,
but it's the extraction that's the hard part, though, right? It's that the complex systems and all of the non-binary things, right? Like that. It's like, well, if it's this, I do this. If I come in at 3, I do this. If I come in and all those things, and just getting that written down is really the hard part. The automation, turning that into code is the easy part.
You have to know what you need to automate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you can't see it, you can't measure it. And that's where, okay, you can automate your process as was. Now you've got, hopefully, if you do it right, you've got the visibility into all that stuff. And then you can say, do we really need 49 steps in this process that's 17 years old?
Simplifying is a big potential.
Well,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
based on the results we're seeing, I shared it with the audience. Hopefully you guys see it too as panelists. You should. But the results are, I think, what we probably expect. Only 10% are seeing true automation, start to finish. And then 40% aren't seeing it at all. 40% are somewhat seeing, and I got to throw in the I don't know answer as well, or the not sure. That's 10%. So, but pretty evenly split, or very evenly split between the no and somewhat. So it sounds like we've got a little ways to go. So what helps us get more automated, or do we even want to be more automated? What's the pitfalls? What's keeping us from that, and how should we be thinking about it?
Well, automation is mostly, if you're talking, or during the phase, we shifted to the first DevOps wave. So quite often I heard people complaining, if the machine is doing it, I have no freedom, I can't decide, I'm losing control. So we got rid of this discussion, but now we have the same with security. So security, then I can't decide, I'm not flexible anymore, it will slow me down. So all this stuff I'm hearing again, just on a different topic. So it's mostly the same people are doing now the same complaints.
Losing control.
Yeah, losing control, and it's mostly it's an excuse for I don't want to structure myself, because if I'm structuring myself, I'm not losing control. I'm just working structured and efficient. And if you want to have this fully freedom to do whatever you want, it's mostly, not every time, but mostly a sign of being unstructured, not really planning ahead, not really reflecting what happened last time. It's more or less, in Germany, you have this expression that you say you're working out of your stomach. So you're feeling left and right, but not driven by numbers or lesson learned or strategies, even if you're failing with the strategy. And and then the personal thing, so this is my domain, and if I'm automating something, I'm losing importance, or I'm losing whatever, I'm not the master anymore. So it's a machine that's telling me what to do. And I think it's the same with security. It's just black magic.
There's some fear behind that.
Yeah.
Tim, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I mean that's wow. We could spend weeks just on that topic alone. I can't count the number of people I saw that. Well, if we do that, then what else am I going to do? Well, what's technical debt you got to burn down, Ace? And is that really what you want to do? Do you want to be a script monkey for the rest of your career? Here's an example, and they've spoken at the DevOps Enterprise Summit a number of times. That's Intel out of Austin, Texas. They're one of their groups. The test group have a suite of like 15,000 tests to execute on code. But because of the process, their testers were test executors, and they could only run 200 to 300 tests a day. And it was just click and wait for the result, click and wait for the result. They moved to and they're doing 4 releases a year of these chipsets. And they moved to a system where based on what was in the payload, the developer would be presented with a suite of tests to choose from, and the developer self-service would click, 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 and go. And now they're executing over 20,000 tests a day. Code coverage went from 15% to 90%. And their test engineers went from test executors to test developers and engineers, a much more satisfying job, a much more creative and rigorous job than just clicking buttons, right? So you can transform people's job satisfaction through automation. And the other thing that automation causes is you get more stuff through the line, you're making more money off of this. So, automation should benefit the company as a whole. And if you're worried about, oh, well, what else would I do? Grab another oar. There's always something else to do.
There's always something to do there. And if you do automation right, you have an opportunity to get quicker to market, time to market if you do it right. And then you're opening up other opportunities that maybe have been opportunity costs that you couldn't take advantage of because of the way you did things in the past. So I think it's a great example of that.
And back to the DevSecOps, if you integrate the security, having the security integrated correctly makes your system go faster.
Yeah, so
Right.
Well, so that's actually, Tim, you're setting me up for all these questions here. Thank you again. So I'm going to launch another poll, and it's related to speed. So again, get your mouses ready, everybody. 3, 2, 1. All right, there you go. So where do you see security slowing you down? High level, right? Big, broad question, right? And this may not necessarily encompass everything you see, but there's some provocative answers out there. So I'm very curious to see if anybody says security doesn't slow me down. Ooh, nice. Okay, we're getting some there. We're watching the results unfold here, and we'll share them briefly here. Yeah, software development looks like it's in the lead. Just a few more seconds and then we'll end the polling. So get your selections in, everybody, and we'll share it with the audience and then we'll discuss. Okay, I'm going to end the polling now. And we'll share the results with the audience. Software development definitely takes the first prize. Second prize, infrastructure deployment and scaling.
wow.
Somewhere else? So this is comprehensive? Really? Or they're really feeling it in those first two. So, yeah.
Yeah, one could ask, security doesn't slow me down. Is that because you don't do any of it? Or because it's built in? There's a couple ways to interpret this.
Yeah. John, where do you see, from Red Hat's perspective, I would think maybe the infrastructure piece might hit a little bit closer home to you. Would you have expected that to be a little higher, or what's your thoughts there?
So, I'm in public sector, so we do have the ATO process, and that's been kind of evolving as well. You have forward-thinking CISOs like Lauren Knausenberger at Air Force, Danny Holtzman, that are looking at more of the instead of just the traditional control set, looking to do more like continuous ATO process. For Red Hat, we have a container platform that's not a big secret, but it's not a fully secure DevSecOps platform, right? So we do rely on partners to fill in some of those gaps. I'm fortunate too. I work with the Linux Foundation a lot. Last week I just took the there's a new certification exam, the Certified Kubernetes Security Specialist. It's not even GA yet, but I was part of the beta. And the interesting part is that they're starting to incorporate kind of the external tooling even in Kubernetes, because those things just don't exist in Kubernetes. So you need runtime components, you need security and scanning on the build side. And so a lot of times the pattern I see with customers is they initially go towards the CI/CD type of phase one, right? And that might be basic things like scanning, building some of the code quality metrics. Some of those things is usually one or two partners that are involved with that as well. Then kind of the next phase is they look to do some of the runtime components, alerting. Usually at that point you're kind of adopting something in the SRE space, like real low on the pyramid, right? So, monitoring, incident response, those things in conjunction with alerting in the runtime components. But that's normally the evolution of it. When they get to more mature, that's really where things get complex, because we can no longer just scan a container image and you're actually kind of hitting bottlenecks that are human people automation bottlenecks. And that's really where, a lot of the I guess Silicon Valley startup type of alignment methodologies, like you've probably heard of. If you've read the book. What was the name of the book? Was the Lean Startup. That was really good. Design thinking, human-centered design, those types of things, and those are really a lot of tools about alignment and where where you can improve all those manual steps. And then that's really kind of where you get to real maturity. But the phase one is usually just, basic scanning, code quality, and those types of things.
Yeah. So Sven or Tim, on the software development side of things, right? The speed at which DevSecOps or DevOps can slow things down or not slow things down, it sounds like I would suspect that the results of this poll are in alignment with what you might see. But again, I guess it goes back to, is it built in or not? So, thoughts or reactions on the results of the poll here.
Yeah, a couple things. It's a matter of, I think John talked about it, is that most developers are not trained or not very good. I'll save the pejoratives around that, about security. So what are you burdening them to do? What are you asking them to do? Are you then asking them to, go beyond just running some smoke test or unit test or static code analysis? Are you asking them to orchestrate a whole bunch of stuff? Is the decision to promote, is that been automated in any way? Things like that. So that's where I can see a lot of it going on. They're not trained, or you're asking them to do stuff that just fundamentally interferes with their job of being creative and writing code. And from the infrastructure and deployment and scaling standpoint, are you restricting or controlling the whole process from the standpoint of, you're only going to be allowed to use immutable objects? What is in your artifact repository is what's approved. Are you using those? Has anybody changed those beyond what we're doing? So that's where things can go wrong as well. So that's kind of our view on that.
Makes sense.
Well, immutable objects is a perfect handover.
Yep.
So,
you're welcome.
Yeah,
JFrog.
that's
Yes.
perfect. So immutability. So one slogan from JFrog is, imagine you have no version anymore. So it's liquid software. So it means building things once, using as long as they are needed. And sometimes quite practical approaches. For example, they have this long-running CI pipelines, and with 20 steps, and you're putting a commit in, and then it will take 20 minutes, and then at step, I don't know, 7 of 10, you have a break. And what they are doing is they're just changing something, and the whole pipeline is running again. So why? So why is this done? So all previous steps, if they are immutable, and you hold them in one repository per step, then you can just start with the failed part again. So for example, so if really everything is immutable, then you can just minimize the amount of rebuilds you're doing again and again, and this time you're burning and the CPU cycles. So you can sell it like decrease CO2 emission. You can sell it like reduce the amount of CPU cycles or being immutable, whatever. It's always the same. So this is one thing. It must be, and the key here is people like this idea because it's helping in their convenience. So if a long-running step, 20 minutes, with a failed 7th step, and a rerun will take just 2 minutes instead of 20, people will do it again and again. They will explore a little bit more left and right what they can do, because a rebuild is not taking so much time. That's one thing. The other thing, what I think is, just assumes that everybody is just completely lazy. And if you help him to be lazy, then you're doing exactly the right thing. So help them to be lazy. And the easy thing is, imagine you start a proof of concept. You have this use case and you start coding. And then the first thing you're doing is you're adding a dependency, because you're not reinventing the wheel. So shift left, not only in the CI pipeline. So many people see security inside the CI pipeline, but shift it into the IDE. So if you're adding a dependency and you see, oh, this license is just crap for us because it's poison for the business, then I can start immediately searching for an equivalent, semantic equivalent replacement in terms of version, in terms of compliance, in terms of whatever. So it must be easy consumable. So integrated in the IDE, so that if he's typing some stuff, at least for the dependencies, he will see immediately what it is. And dependencies are just a dominant part of the software development. So if you're looking how many things you're writing and how many things you're using, So I think help them to be lazy, push it in their common tools they're using, and speed up. And then I think they will support your change.
Helping to be lazy. I mean, who wants to work more than they have to, right? I mean, I don't think anyone's, generally speaking, humans love to work, right? We're on this planet to work, but let's do it smartly, right? And I think you got some great examples there. And if you're successful at shifting it left, then you have less to do as it goes right. So.
Yeah.
And there's another side to that we've seen. It's an interesting dynamic. Is the greater the pain for something going wrong, like just the length of the build, or the time to recover, et cetera, the longer that penalty is, the more conservative and less creative your engineers are.
Definitely.
Because they don't want to go crazy and try all these really cool things, because bang, and it's going to whack me for 3 days waiting for a new build to finish. So anytime you can squeeze out those penalties, just make things go faster on their own, or automate all the other steps, kill off all those manual steps along the way, you're going to get more creative code coming out of your engineers, because they can focus, they can stay. They don't have to do context switching. Well, I'm starting my build. It's going to take 4 hours. What else am I going to do? Type of thing. So if their build takes 15 minutes, they can stay focused on that. So that's another aspect of it. Yes, being lazy, I agree. We all want to do less work, but engineers tend to want to do more creative work.
Yeah, but you can explain it with a third thing. It's allowed to make more mistakes. Because you can do 10 mistakes in the same amount of time. So just crash it. So it's this random engineering. Huh?
Yeah, well, you learn more from the bridges that fall down than the ones that stay up. So now go knock down a whole bunch of bridges. There's no penalty for it.
And if it only takes 5 or 10 minutes to knock down the bridge versus an hour, there you go. You knock down more bridges.
That's more
so you touched on a few different capabilities and things that we would hope to see in various CI/CD pipelines, and I want to go back to now another quick poll from the audience to start to narrow and focus in a little bit on what are some of the key use cases that that people are focused on, that development shops or DevOps shops want, and so I'm going to launch this particular poll right now. And the question is, what are the top security use cases or capabilities you see in DevSecOps today? So this could just, what you're using yourself or what you're observing as a market participant, what have you. But go ahead and start clicking away and we'll share the results here in a minute. And of course, this is not a comprehensive list. So there's something else option as well. But these are the areas where we see a lot of focus. As RunSafe is in the market and having conversations with all different types of businesses and different verticals, these are some of the things that thematically come up over and over again. So we'll share the results on where things land here in just a minute, or just a few seconds, I should say. So if you haven't clicked away, click now or forever hold your mouse. All right. Let's end the polling and we'll share the results. Source code, scanning source code for vulnerability and scanning binaries for vulnerability. No surprise there, the lead. So John, you talked earlier about different frameworks or capabilities being opened up in Kubernetes to help bring some of the tools like these in, but where does this fall in terms of maybe against that backdrop, or just in general?
Yeah, so Kubernetes, a lot of times it does get involved with DevOps initiatives as well, because we talked about the way modern teams work is to kind of have these 2 pizza teams, and then you hand things off, and a lot of that handoff is API driven. And Kubernetes ends up being a good mechanism to be that API where everyone's speaking the same language. Now there is I don't want to sound too self-serving because I do work at Red Hat, but there is a also kind of a cognitive overhead of adopting Kubernetes. So it's not the one true solution or the one true light and nothing is, right? It just ends up being, especially for medium to larger size orgs, a good way to do it. What I always tell customers is, because they ask me a lot, what ISVs or partners should we go with? And I tell them to kind of throw away the checklists. There is a minimum set of criteria that you're going to need for your application, but it's going to be a lot more important, from what I've seen, to have a partner that's going to move at your cadence, that's going to work with you for your success and help measure your success, than it is to be, I've had this specific, widget or feature or other thing, this solution has these other features, this other one doesn't. It's just going to work out a lot better for your outcomes if you have someone that's just going to move at your cadence. And that was even backed up too, and if you look at the State of DevOps report as well, when they talk about using contractors or partners, those things work out really well when they move with you. But when you throw things over to the wall with them and come back, that's when it kind of hurts your performance around tracking some of the 4 key metrics that they talk about as part of that analysis.
So yeah, don't put your blinders on. I need to check the box on having a scanning tool. I need to check the box on having a compliance analysis tool, right? Rather, you're going to need some capabilities, but choose the right partner that's going to walk down the path with you, versus tossing something over the fence back and forth.
Yeah, it's just it'll put you on a much happier path in the long run.
Yeah, we tend to get fixated on what capability or what feature functionality do I need. That's only half the decision process, or maybe even less, right? It's partnering and being able to work hand in hand with the vendor that you choose. So that's good insight. Sven or Ruppert, or Sven or Tim, sorry. Either of you have a reaction to the poll results here?
Well, Tim, if you want to start.
I suppose it's not too surprising for any of this, because it seems to be pretty broadly distributed. Kind of going back to, you ask 12 people what DevOps is, you'll get 39 definitions. And if you ask them what DevSecOps is, you'll get even more. So, and then you look at maturity, where people are on their journey of actually shifting all the stuff all over the place and things like that. Certainly if you look at first principles, if you're shipping vulnerable code, that's a bad thing. So everybody's got to be able to do that. And then, okay, so let's look at where can that bad code go wrong. But then it evolves into, especially from a governance and audit standpoint, you look at, is the data trustable? Okay, yeah, because I'm using these tools to do. Then the next thing that those auditors are going to look at is the process trustable. Right. So are there any vulnerabilities as far as role-based access control, manual steps? Okay, you have to have a manual step here. What are you putting in place to require the decision criteria, or any notes that went along with that decision and so forth? So that's from that standpoint. But these are all things in this poll. This is all stuff you have to do. You just do. So I don't really see why any of them would be more higher importance than others.
They're all table stakes. Yeah, I was baiting the audience with something else, because I figured these are all table stakes, right? You got to do them.
Yeah. I think though what I see is a lot of people weren't doing these things before, right? And so when they try to adopt DevOps and CI/CD, they have to start somewhere. And sometimes they do get into a thing where it's like they want to do too much right away, and you have to find that balance between, I'm going to deliver something in production, I'm going to show business value to leaders or to customers, whatever the goal is and do these things in a better fashion. And sometimes people have trouble kind of finding that balance. They do too much up front or not enough, and then it gets hard to put the guardrails on later. So and that's part of everyone's own path to DevSecOps.
Yeah.
But
Well,
if you
go ahead, Sven. Sorry.
So seeing at this or looking at this result, it reminds me quite often to the question how to start with this stuff, or what can it do or so. I think if you want to start with this DevSecOps, or if you're just in the beginning, as mentioned earlier, you should have something easy. So don't grab the most complex thing. And if you're looking at two things, for example, here, there's two things, checking the code you're writing for vulnerabilities or checking the dependencies for vulnerabilities or compliance issues. I would go with first with the dependencies, because if you're looking at the whole system, everywhere dependencies. In Docker, you have this from statement, you have dependencies, and you're just configuring a little bit, but the whole operating system is a dependency. In your code, you start adding dependencies to get the basic functionality, basic libraries and all this stuff. So have the first improvement here. If you're looking at dependencies, if you're scanning this one, this is a big part of the whole system you're creating from the point of view as a developer. And then you have the first results. Oh, there is something. Yes, the first time this process, I have to do something. What's perfect is I have to change a version of a library. You have to improve the process of increasing a major version, bringing it to production, measuring the time. So the information is available, the information is consumable, and it's activated in production. So these timelines you can start measuring and then start optimizing these tiny things. And if you are here, starting, or you can begin to transform the process you are in with these tiny steps, first measuring, then the management involved in making a decision just to shorten this time, or allowing here something, or removing restrictions, or giving some guidelines, or whatever, then you have the beginning of an evolution. So you can start growing this transformation without saying someone, your code is bad. This is something personal. You can say, this binary is bad. So everybody pointing to someone that is not part of the team. And this social aspect will help you to trigger this transformation and to say the truth. To understand there's a vulnerability in this binary is way easier as, oh, with machine learning and AI, I analyzed on the fly this piece of code with some experimental, just startup company given tool that will say me, maybe if you're invoking this piece of code under these circumstances can lead to something. This is magic. So I would focus on the easy parts and start learning to transform and to get acceptance here. And with this, you can start growing left and right to the management, to the customer, to whatever.
It's a crawl, walk, run paradigm.
Yeah.
Start out small and pick a dependency so you don't have awkward situations of telling developers your code's bad. So yeah, but then they get used to the process, right? And then you can start to weave in some of the internal code because you've got a tried and true process and they're comfortable with the process, which might make then that whole discussion around code that's written internally a little bit easier. Yeah. Well, we're running up towards the the final moments of the panel discussion, and I want to make sure that we get an opportunity to talk about business results, because that's an important piece, right? Having all of the components in place and the right process is obviously very critical. But at the end of the day, we're trying to get to market quickly, or we're trying to differentiate ourselves, or obviously grow revenue. So, and DevSecOps, DevOps should help with all of those and more. So I want to poll the audience again here. So this is the last one. So make sure you got your mouse ready again. We definitely want to get your thoughts on this one, as we haven't touched this topic yet. So we'll launch the poll. And the question is, what are the key business benefits that automated security delivers in a DevSecOps environment, right? Or what does DevSecOps deliver that you find valuable amongst the options here? Again, and kind of pick the top 3 that we tend to see, but definitely if you don't see what your top priority is on the list, don't be afraid to select something else. We'll give it a few more seconds. Folks, weigh in. If few more trickling in. Pretty even balance so far. All right, going once, going twice. All right, we'll end the poll and let's share the results. Wow, totally even. Time to market and compliance. I would have thought product differentiation might have been, you know, something that you kind of maybe indirectly allowed you to, you know, enjoy some differentiation in your product at the end of the day. I mean, if you go back to Tim, when I was looking at product differentiation, I was thinking about what you said. If you do it right, you know, you're very nimble in the process. You don't have 15, 20, 25-minute build cycles. That spurs more creativity, which leads to product differentiation. But, you know, maybe we're not there yet as a populace, but yeah, open it up for reactions. Surprises?
I'll jump in. I mean, no, I'm not surprised. These are all, it depends a little bit on the audience as well. Certainly, you know, everybody benefits from DevOps, from time to market and compliance and differentiation. There's some other things that aren't mentioned here is job satisfaction. One, are your developers getting frustrated because they're asked to do things they're not really trained or want to do? But if you also look at the efficiency of your pipeline and, you know, how often do you ship something out to production where, oh, good grief, it broke. Now we have this fire drill to do it. And I guess I'm not going to see my daughter's first piano recital tonight because I got to stay and roll this thing back. Or just, you know, if your production release process requires 30 people on a conference call for 3 days, that's not going to make a lot of people happy. So, you know, if you're doing DevOps right, if you're doing DevSecOps right, you also have a lot of job satisfaction in addition to these things that are here.
Really good point. Yeah, you have that ability to roll back. You know, it's part of the architecture. It's innate to it. And so, yeah, if you're not able to do that, you're not doing DevOps, DevSecOps.
Yeah, but you also have the confidence that, okay, I push the button to release, it's done. Good.
Yeah.
I'm out of here. You know?
Right. And if all of the other automated testing upstream left of that, you know, is working as designed, then you should have full confidence that it's going to work in production. Any other key benefits, business benefits that we might have missed that you're seeing, John or Sven?
Yeah, I think for me, you know, the evolution of it is, you know, initially, if I was voting, I'd probably been the time to market or compliance, right? Because you focus on that CI/CD, you know, and then the security aspect to it. I think once you get pretty mature in your process, you know, you probably start selecting product differentiation because, you know, once you start doing things like rapid prototyping and, you know, kind of the lean startup model where you build these things, you get feedback and you make these decisions whether to pivot or persevere, that becomes really powerful because, you know, one of the most expensive things you can do in IT is build something nobody wants. And I see that happening all the time because they built something, you know, for DoD, for instance, like they built something without any warfighter input, right? And then it got built and the warfighter didn't want it or couldn't use it. And that really happens all the time. And that's really the model that most startups have used. And now, you know, enterprise IT has started to adopt that as well. So, you know, as you start adopting, you get really farther along and you start doing things like human-centered design and you kind of break down a lot of the silos that you have past just, you know, using tools. That becomes really powerful. And, you know, with that, there's a lot of other things like learning and, you know, one of the biggest kind of gaps still is, you know, how we learn from outages and incidents and things like that. You know, a lot of times we just fix things and go home. But once you start getting more mature, you start turning into more of a learning organization. And that's really what DevOps was all about. If you go back and look at, you know, TPS, the Toyota production system, and some of the things that from Lean that made their way into DevOps in the first place, it really wasn't about tools. It was about this 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 learning environment that they had created at Toyota, which was all about using hypothesis and the scientific method, and really kind of the constraints that they were putting on the system in terms of paying down their debt allowed them to be creative and allowed them to experiment. And they just created this kind of learning culture around it. And it really wasn't about Kanban or any of those other tools that you kind of read about. So that's really kind of the evolution of DevOps and DevSecOps to me.
Yeah, strong influence from there. That's not something that would be totally obvious. That's a great point. And I love the idea of, I put being in a startup, right? If you're doing this right, you can iterate. And so maybe another one to put up here would be you're able to achieve product market fit rather than just persevere and hope. You've got the tools to iterate and respond to the customers you do have if you're doing this right. So, well, we're coming up on the hour, and want to give it an opportunity for any closing thoughts as we wrap.
I'll jump in with just a quick thing. Don't try to boil the ocean, but do something. DevOps and DevSecOps is continually improving. So choose something you can consume and do that.
Good point. Move quickly. Sven?
Well, one thing is start with tiny steps. Just start.
Let people be lazy.
Don't discuss it. Don't discuss and try to find the optimal way to start. Just do it and calculate that you're failing. That's good, because a bad algorithm perfectly implemented will be always beaten by a better algorithm. So try to find the better algorithm and try it. So I think the culture of it's allowed to have errors, mistakes, doing things wrong. If this culture is there, then you have a good chance to be good in DevOps and DevSecOps and whatever ops is coming.
Dive in. Don't be shy. Good. John, final thought.
Yeah, I think, getting started, that's the $1 million question. I do think there's lots of value in starting small, especially when you just look at building momentum is so critical, because you're going to have naysayers and you're going to need to demonstrate success to kind of build that up over time. Definitely look at the State of DevOps report, which is free to download. And you can talk about the 4 key metrics and some of the things that correlate to high performers, like adopting open source. But everyone can do something. So, think about even just DevOps, right? A lot of it's based around flow and improvement of daily work. So focus on your constraints. The changes can span tools, they can span processes, culture. You might not be able to change all those. You might be at a very large organization and you say, well, this is way too big for me. But, a lot of times when they measure success, it's just based around your team, not your entire company. If you work at a 10,000 person company, you're not trying to turn that into an entire, like Silicon Valley company, right? You're just trying to adopt things, make things better on your team. And that's why the State of DevOps report actually measures things at the team level and not necessarily, okay, I have to turn the Navy into Netflix, right? That's not what it's about. It's just about making things better, and focusing on your constraints is the way good way to get started with that.
Scope it properly and don't bite off more than you can chew. Yeah, that's great. Definitely a theme to take away from today. So thank you, John. Thank you, Sven. Thank you, Tim. Really appreciate all your support representing Red Hat, JFrog, and Cloudbees. So thank you for your participation at the audience level. We loved getting the poll results. And we've got one more event tomorrow. So if you want to dig into supply chain security, again, go to runsafesecurity.com. hit the blog page and register. We'd love to see you there. So with that, I'll close it out, and thanks everybody again. Have a great day.